welcome to my channel. I know if you are a regular, that intro probably just threw you right off. That's not the channel intro. Now, it's been a while that I've wanted to revamp the channel name or the episode intro name. I said for a while I don't film in the evening anymore, which is when I used to have a glass of wine and share the case of the week. But having the true crime and wine hasn't really fit for a while. And I also know that it doesn't fit for everyone. I know that those of you who don't drink alcohol have come up with like your own routine of what you do or what you sip on while you watch. But one thing that kind of came out of the whole true crime wine thing that I hold on to very dearly is the name and that it was the catalyst of the Sippendales, who are all of you here every single week supporting me, supporting the cases that we talk about. And so to pay homage to that, I would like to introduce to you the channel name revamp, Sippendales. This name I feel includes you all. It allows me to honor you and my love and my appreciation for you. And it also doesn't restrict frequency of uploads. I have been seeing your comments about wanting more episodes per week. So exciting things. That is coming. I know change can be hard. Nothing on the channel besides me doing the introduction of saying that, you know, welcome to True Crime and Wine is now just going to be Sippendales. We're still going to be talking about true crime cases, still going to deliver it in the exact same format as I do, but I will be working on giving you more episodes per week. So I guess that's the only thing that's changed. And judging by the requests in the comments, it seems like something you want. So I guess the revamp is a bonus. Now, if you are new here, that probably made no sense at all. So hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherrilyn. I am so glad you found me. Over here on the channel, the vibe is true crime storytelling. I cover all types of true crime cases. We are a true crime community here on the channel known as the Sippendales. So feel free to respectfully talk and share with each other in the comments. I absolutely love seeing you guys interacting and talking amongst yourselves and just being a part of the channel. So that's what we do here. Okay, before we get started with this week's case, I have a quick message for you. Thank you to our sponsor today, Beam. You guys, I get so excited to talk about them. I cannot tell you how much I look forward to my nightly cup of dream. It is pretty much like a nightly requirement for Brent and I in the house. Since we last spoke about it, Brent and I had actually blown through that bag before our next month's shipment came in because we were sharing one and just not calculating appropriately how we can stretch that to last for the month. I will say we will never make that mistake again. We immediately noticed that we were not getting the same rest that we had gotten used to, and just like even the same like energy in the morning from having that rest. So I ended up ordering an extra 4 bags for like a reserve to make sure that that never happens again. Now we are back to solid sleeps, pretty much waking up before our alarm every morning, which is great because Reverie has turned into a little bit of an early riser, which I have not been used to with her. I've been on a morning workout routine kick. Brent's cut down on coffee, and I have even replaced my nightly cup of wine most nights just so that I can have my dream drink instead, because I just look forward to that so much more now. It's like a cozy cup of cocoa that just soothes you to bed, and it's only 15 calories. Now, I'm a creature of habit, especially with flavors that I love, so I am glued to the chocolate peanut butter, but I totally encourage you to check out the variety of flavors they have. They have cinnamon cocoa, sea salt caramel, white chocolate peppermint, raspberry chocolate, mint chip, and pumpkin spice. I also may or may not have heard that apple cider donut was just added just in time for the fall. Like, I feel like if I'm, gonna stray from my peanut butter, I could get on board with an apple cider donut. I truly cannot say enough about them, obviously, judging by my last ad. And if you want to check out what my hype is about, you can subscribe, save 20% plus an additional 15% off on top of that, and a free frother, which is my favorite. It's so cute. With my code Sherrilyn, when you click on the link in my description, or if you scan the QR code on your screen, that's up to 35% off the original price. You can also pause, skip, or cancel at any time, so there is no risk. Once again, that is up to 35% off when you use my code Sherrilyn by clicking on the link in my description or scanning the QR code on your screen. Thank you again so much, Beam, for sponsoring today's video, and thank you in advance for the amazing sleep that I will continue to have, but not before the end of this video. All right, let's get settled in, get grounded, get your sips. And while you get in your safe space, I have a riddle for you. A man describes his daughters saying, they're all blonde, but two. All brunette, but two. And all redhead, but two. How many daughters does he have? All right, the case we are talking about today left me so shocked at the end. I also, even though it's solved, had a lot of questions. It's definitely a reminder, though, that even those who you look up to, who present themselves as leaders, role models, close friends, they cannot be trusted. I repeat, cannot be trusted. No one can these days, it seems. And a woman named Marie Carlson sadly came to realize this on October 17th, 2011, but it would take years to find out what happened to her and who preyed on her vulnerabilities. Now, Marie's upbringing was a little bit unique. She was born in the Philippines to a single mother, and then she was taken in by an American serviceman, and he had two daughters, and they kind of, I don't know, were live-in besties. They absolutely, all the three girls loved each other, and when they got older, they all found out that Marie was actually the daughter of this serviceman. So they were sisters, which is just crazy because they had grown up with this bond, but there was just something in them that when Marie's sisters were explaining it, they just felt like it. They're just like, we just knew at a young age, and it wasn't even so much as just knowing, but being like you are my sister. There's just something about you. We should have been sisters. And then they were. As they got older, the girls got even closer. Marie and one of her sisters even moved to Florida, got an apartment together. They chose one that was behind a karaoke bar so that they could go there all the time. And people who knew Marie said she just had this magnetic pull about her. I'm sure you can think of somebody like that you know in your life. They just have this natural ability to draw you in, where you just want to get closer to them, and you've got to know that person. So that's how Marie is described, and she was absolutely adorable, like such a beauty inside and out, great style, great personality, her friends said. But I think one of the characteristics of her that made her a little bit more endearing is that she was one of those girls who didn't know how beautiful she was. She focused on lifting other people up and making sure that they knew how beautiful they were. She was a very compassionate person. So that beauty inside and out definitely captivated a young man named Jeff. Jeff and Marie started seeing each other, and they didn't waste a lot of time before getting married and having a little girl named Paris. After having Paris, Marie got a college degree in criminal justice, and after school got a job as a booking deputy in Colorado. But her main aspirations were to become an FBI agent. Now, something really important to know about Marie is as uplifting and caring as she was for others, she really did struggle a little bit with life's ups and downs. I really don't think anybody is exempt from that. She and Jeff had hit a rough patch. They ended up getting divorced. And although Marie absolutely loved her child, she was a wonderful mother, she didn't always have the easiest time with her mental health. She ultimately was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and it was really taking a toll on Marie. She was struggling with job and house stability. She was in not a good place as she was trying to work through those hurdles, and she had to make what I can imagine would have been a really excruciating decision to give custody of her daughter Paris to her ex-husband because she was struggling, but recognized that she was unable to give her the care she wanted to and knew Paris deserved. After her divorce, she moved to Fort Walton Beach in Florida in 2008, and she was doing so much that she could to better herself, better her life. She was in constant contact with her ex and her daughter. But if you've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or you know somebody who has, you know it can be a difficult illness to really get a hold of and control of. She was on medication, but that's not always the only answer. If you're going through stresses in life, like losing your job, feeling like you've kind of lost your family, feeling lost, it makes it so much more difficult to, hang on and just reset and get back to quote unquote normal. We've spoken a lot about what that term even means over here, especially when it comes to mental health and the stigma. But the reality is it's not always the answer of, oh, take this medication and you're all better. Now, one incident that happened with Marie after she had moved to Florida, she was driving down the road and all of a sudden she just stops her car, got out and just started walking and looked to be in distress. It was concerning enough that a woman had actually pulled over, asked to help her. Marie got in her car and this woman took her to a church that she went to. It was called the Calvary Emerald Coast Church. Calvary Emerald Coast Church. That's a mouthful. This church is run by Pastor James Flanders, and James is described as a very charismatic pastor. I think that's the word that I saw by basically everybody who tried to explain their vibe and experience in the church. And then from James specifically, he was charismatic. People felt seen by him, comfortable. He had a very chill vibe. He'd give his sermons in jeans and sneakers. The church was also in this old grocery store, so it was converted into a church, and the parishioners felt like it was very homey. It wasn't hoity-toity. There wasn't this hoofy floofy church that they were going to. It didn't feel preachery. It just kind of felt like you were in a chill family vibe, being taught and mentored, and in just a really chill, laid back way. People who went to the church said it was really fun. James played guitar sometimes. He streamed the services live on YouTube. He and his wife Tanya also had this little hubby-wife musical group. She sang and played congas, and then he shredded the strings on the guitar. In general, though, Tanya was more behind the scenes. She supported her man, and people just saw both of them as people that you could really look up to. Now, when Marie went here, something that she saw right away was that this church very much felt like a family. Everyone was quite tight-knit and supportive, and it's what she seemed to want. She obviously had her family that she loved very much, leaned on, but sometimes you look for that extended support system, especially I think when you're in a new phase of your life where you're trying to sort it out and press the reset button and make yourself a better version of who you want to be. So having this support system to get Marie to where she wanted to be in life, in a better headset and everything, not only for herself but for her daughter, this setup seemed to be exactly what she was looking for. And people in her life who knew her prior to even going to this church really saw that, okay, she's embracing this, she's really leaning into God, she's starting to feel a lot of love for herself, which I think was really important. Everybody wanted Marie to see how beautiful she was inside and out when she really didn't seem to see it. So this was helping her kind of combat that darkness that she was going through at the time. The Flanders were pretty key in also wanting to help Marie, so much so that they took her into their home to live with them while she was doing her best to get on her feet. Everyone thought at the church, that's great. What a nice thing to do. Wasn't really surprising. The Flanders were people who liked to help a lot of people. But then it was shared that Marie was also helping the Flanders with something in their life that was pretty massive. She became the surrogate to the Flanders. For Marie's sister, this revelation was not something that was really surprising to her at all. We've definitely covered that Marie was the type of person to literally do anything for those that she cared about. She had even told a friend a few years prior that she would be a surrogate for her when she was struggling to get pregnant. So she definitely would offer to do something like this for somebody. And in this situation, she was also helped in return. She had a place to live, her bills were covered, and she was going to grow this baby and then nanny the baby afterwards. I think with that aspect, it led to more questions from not only just Marie's family and friends, but also churchgoers. I think that you could say, I guess there's like a little bit of a conflict of interest because you're now also like living with this little one, and if you've know somebody who's been a surrogate, there's definitely an aspect where you have to kind of distance yourself and make sure that at the end of this that the baby is going somewhere else. You're doing this for somebody else. I cannot imagine how convoluted that could all get if you were still living in the home and were seeing this baby every day. And things didn't get clearer as there were kind of rumblings going on within the church. There were different stories that were being told depending on who you spoke to. Some of Tanya's friends had said that the whole situation just kind of happened, that Marie was seeing somebody who turned out to be abusive. She left, but then found out she was pregnant. Tanya said that Marie didn't want the baby, so they told her, okay, well, if you can, carry the baby, we will raise the baby. All Marie's family really knew was that she said she was going to be the surrogate and that they had gone through artificial insemination. So conflicting stories out there, maybe even a little sprinkle of church gossip, who knows. Nonetheless, on July 14th, 2011, Marie gave birth to a little baby girl named Grace Rain Flanders. Like some of the stories that were told, they all did remain living under one roof. And hey, their business is their business. Who are we to judge? This could have been a situation where that could have gone on very long term and just been like church gossip forever. But 3 months later, on October 19th, 2011, a mass text is sent from Marie to her friends and family, and it said, "Yesterday I left Fort Walton Beach. There is something I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and there will be no better time than now to do it." Smiley face. Another text came right after saying, "I didn't tell any of you what I have been planning or that I was about to leave because you would have probably tried to talk me out of it." Another smiley face. "I appreciate and love all of you." This text was sent to about 10 people, including her sisters and her ex-husband. And they all agreed that this was probably the most non-Marie text that they had ever seen. It was very formal for Marie, had this double spaces between each section that she was talking about, and very vague also at the same time. One of her really good friends who got the text, this was somebody that Marie looked to like a second mother, replied back and said, "Well, what about baby Grace?" And she gets a reply from Marie that says, "She's in good hands. She's with Tanya and James." Now, to you and I, we probably wouldn't have noticed a big red flag in this message, but to her friends, something big stood out. When Marie would speak about her living situation or, her new group of friends, it was always James and Tanya, never Tanya and James. James was always mentioned first, and it was just something that her friend noticed about her verbiage. So when this text came through, when she replied asking about what about baby Grace, and she said Tanya and James were going to care for her, it was that name switcheroo that stood out to her, and her husband were like, no, something is not right. They reach out to James and Tanya and they say, hey, We're a little bit worried. Is Marie okay? The response they get back from the Flanders is, we're not sure. She left. So they start calling around to everyone that they can think of, other family members, friends. They're driving around looking for her. No one has heard from her, and they're figuring out that other people are concerned as well. One of those people being Marie's ex-husband, Jeff. So when her sisters and close friends also shared the same sentiment, he kind of felt a little bit relieved that, okay, this isn't me just looking into this too much or being overbearing or anything like that. And they suggested to him, I think it's best if you file a missing persons report. So he does. He makes sure to let the officer that he speaks to know that, yes, even though Marie is the type of person to, kind of just up and go on an adventure for a couple days, he absolutely could not see her have contact with one single person in her life, especially him or their daughter. They spoke a lot. Being separated from someone and being divorced doesn't always equal this negative relationship. He considered her one of the sweetest, most warm and caring people that he had ever known, and he didn't feel like she could just up and leave, not because maybe she wouldn't want to, but she would know that it would hurt and harm her loved ones worrying about her. Obviously, it leaves a difficult decision for detectives to make. I mean, Marie was 37 at the time, so she absolutely had the right to just go off and do what she wanted if she pleased. She didn't have to tell anybody about those decisions if she didn't want to. But by the point that they were contacted, it had been about a week. And the longest that those that she was really close to had ever gone without hearing from her was maybe a couple days. So this was out of character. One of the first people that they reached out to were James and Tanya, since they knew from Marie's loved ones that she was living with them, had just birthed their child only 3 months ago. And James says, yeah, he's also concerned. Initially, he didn't really think too much about Marie leaving. He also agreed that it wasn't unusual for her to maybe go for a couple days. However, he acknowledged that the day that she left, things were different. According to James, the day Marie left was on the Monday. So this was actually 2 days prior to that mass text being sent out. He said that day Marie woke up and she was in a bad mood. She just kind of said that she wanted to be alone, and something about her vibe made him uncomfortable. He felt worried about her, about the baby, so he decided to stay home because he mentions to the police officer that she has bipolar disorder and she can change and go on roller coaster rides. So he didn't know what to expect from her demeanor when she had woke up that morning. James said later on in the day, Marie said that she was tired and wanted to go lay down. So he was like, absolutely. Tanya had decided to take baby Grace to go shopping in Destin. And he said he took that opportunity to just get out of the house and go for a run. After his run, he comes back and he realizes that Marie is gone. There was a bag packed, but it was left behind, and so was her medication. So this leads detectives to wonder, okay, has she harmed herself, do you think? And James says, I don't know, I hope not. When they speak to Tanya, she agrees that that is pretty much exactly how that day played out. 2 days after that text was sent, she was feeling uneasy, feeling like, yeah, okay, we should have heard from Marie by now. So she went to go and look for her. She said she made a list of all of these places that she wanted to go and look. She went to hotels. She went to the airport, spoke to as many taxi drivers that were waiting at the airport as she could. And she even drove around the airport parking lot looking for Marie's truck with James. At this point, the detectives find out that this was a huge moment because her and James actually did find Marie's truck there. And from their standpoint, they took that as an indication that she really did mean that she just needed to get away, go somewhere, and that she did leave. As per the parking receipt, her truck had been dropped off at the airport on the 18th. This would have been a day after she left the Flanders house and a day before she sent out that mass text. But when investigators look into her financial statements, they can't find any record of her purchasing any ticket to go anywhere. There's no activity on her bank cards, credit cards, and more importantly, there is no record of her on any flight logs leaving to go anywhere. One of the bigger stalls very early on in this investigation is they could have probably pulled surveillance records to see when Marie had arrived at the airport, if she had arrived with anybody, or if it was Marie driving her truck at all. But the surveillance system was not working on that day. So this is already a complex investigation, and one that I think Marie's family members wanted to actively get involved with as well behind the scenes. So one of Marie's really good friends, the mother figure that I spoke about a little bit earlier, who noticed the verbiage on the text, she's reaching out to all of these new friends that Marie has met through the church, specifically the Flanders, just to see if there's, they can kind of bounce ideas off of each other to figure out maybe if they heard something about a place that Marie was interested in going to. And she finds out during this conversation that 3 days after Marie had gone missing, the Flanders had put her things in storage. She was worried that it would come to a point where, this storage is going to be needing to be paid for on a month-to-month or a yearly basis, and she didn't want to risk anything happening to Marie's things. So she actually offered to take it over, take the payments, so that Marie's things would not eventually become abandoned. And the Flanders were like, okay, yeah, sure, you can do that. And they gave her friends the keys. So they go to the storage unit, trying to see if there's any clues that they can find there, any notes in a daytimer or receipts or plans in a journal. They even look on her computer to see if there were searches or places or prices of flights hitting up like Trivago or something like that. They didn't find anything. In fact, the computer was basically wiped clean. And that was concerning to them. So they went to the police and handed over the keys and gave them this computer and said, listen, we aren't pros, but from what we can tell, she hasn't planned anything. She looks like she hasn't even looked for anything on this thing. And in her storage locker, you'll see it looks like she hasn't even taken a single thing with her. It didn't even look like she even sold anything to try to have funding to leave. She's living with the Flanders. She's not making an income. She's kind of raising a baby or building a baby to earn her keep. She didn't have money to just up and go. And the fact that all of her things were there and anything that would even have some sort of monetary value, what didn't seem to be sold. Her truck probably would have been the only thing that would have brought larger amount of cash in, but that was abandoned at the airport. Investigators hit another roadblock when they were hoping to get information from the computer like Marie's friends, but at this point, just where technology was, the computer was wiped. There was no information that they could pull from it. They were able to see that there was a backup of some of Marie's texts, but just the capabilities that they had forensically for deciphering codes and stuff, it just all looked like mumble jumble when they tried to download it. So it didn't make any sense. And that's as advanced as their technology was at the time. So they just start going back to just old school investigation, questioning, interviewing as many people as they could. And a lot of those people were members of the church where Marie had spent a lot of her time in the last year of her life. The main thing they really wanted to get insight on was what the members of the church knew about this whole surrogacy situation. Everyone said it pretty much just came out of nowhere. It was announced officially at church one day, just very casually, oh, so we've been wanting to have a baby, and Marie has agreed to be the surrogate, so there we go. Now, everyone's understanding was this was a traditional surrogacy. Tanya's egg, James's sperm, Marie's the oven. But some people they spoke to, those who were very close with Tanya specifically, heard that they opted for the old-fashioned way. That was the phrase that was used, and that became much more focused on, I guess, more gossip whispers happening after baby Grace was born, because even Marie's sister said it was obvious when the baby was born and she asked to see pictures. It was clear as day that this little bundle of joy was her sister's child. She was like the spitting image of Marie. So investigators want to learn more about that. They ask Tanya to come in for some questions, and she explains that she and James had had a couple miscarriages after their older child was born. And during the time that Marie was living with them, Marie could see their pain and struggles and really understood that they were desperate to have another child. So she offered to carry their baby for them. Tanya says to the investigator that there was never really a conversation about in vitro or anything like that. They didn't have the money to fund something like that, so they were just going to plant the seed the old-fashioned way. And so then they were able to hear from Tanya this phrase that everybody else had said, this old-fashioned way. She explains that one evening Marie and James got tipsy on some sake. Tanya was sober but present, and watched her husband and Marie make a baby. Now, Tanya's version is that Marie did this just as a favor. There were no strings attached. This was Tanya and James's baby. But the more investigators talked to other members of the church and more people were feeling more comfortable, like, oh, have you been talking? What have you been hearing? What have you been saying? Stories started to switch a little bit. And people that were very close with the Flanders said that Marie had confided in them that they were a throuple. Marie was considered James's second wife. He even wore 2 rings to symbolize that unity. Even though it wasn't legally bound, that was just like a symbol between them. And in today's world, there's all types of different living situations, family situations. Finding this type of information out doesn't point to a crime or a reason why Marie would just want to up and leave. And right now, all of these speculations about them being in a throuple and stuff, it's technically hearsay. This is from people saying, oh, we heard this from Marie, or he wears this ring, and they can't confirm that. And the Flanders aren't elaborating on anything more than the fact that Marie was their surrogate. They did try to get some context several months later from the Flanders, but when they reached out to them to try to do another interview, they realized that James, Tanya, and baby Grace had just up and left the home in the middle of the night, and no one from their church could track them down. Now, they were eventually tracked down in Tucson, Arizona, but again, there's nothing that is wrong with that. Like Marie, they have a right to just up and leave. The investigation is pretty much at a standstill until April 4th, 2012. So this is almost like at the 6-month mark of Marie's disappearance. A tip comes through to Crime Stoppers. The tip just says James Flanders killed Marie Carlson and her body is buried in their backyard. So a recovery team goes to the Flanders' previous house that they lived in with Marie. They use several methods to find remains, like a cadaver, dog, radar. Unfortunately, though, they did not find Marie. And that left everything at pretty much a standstill for almost 4 years. They hadn't given up on the case, though. Even prosecutor Kelly Siegler got involved to try and help re-interview people. And the good thing is that by this point, even more people were feeling comfortable with, like, the time had passed to just talk a little bit more openly about what they knew about the whole situation. And a youth pastor that was now took over James's job at the church, said, I don't know if you know this, but prior to James up and leaving, he had a meeting where some things came out and it led to the decision that it was best that James resign from the church. He had told this youth pastor, then the one who took over his job, that things aren't looking good for me right now. I have been in a polygamy relationship. Marie was not just a surrogate. And not only does that not look good, but the day that she disappeared, we got into a physical altercation where she left scratches on me prior to me getting up, leaving the house to calm down. He was also told by an elder of the church that he and James had gone for coffee a couple weeks after Marie's disappearance, and James asked this gentleman if he was able to help him get out of the country. This man said, I can't, but like, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? And James just said, I can't tell you, but it's really bad. Definitely does not look good, but this is not a confession or any proof of anything, and essentially can also be seen as hearsay. But by this time, as you know, they're all like reinvigorated again, there had been huge advances in technology. So investigators decide to take another look at Marie's computer. This time they were able to retrieve some records, and those texts that had come through all just scrambled came back clear. And there were a lot of texts between James and Marie. Through this, they're able to clearly see, not from gossip or hearsay, that there is a relationship. This is not just Marie is a surrogate for the Flanders. They see there's a relationship there. James texting Marie things like, oh, it drove him crazy to see her at the church and not be able to kiss her, wanting to give her a massage on the neck with his mouth. And he also said that his weenus said hello. So now they're able to tick off that, okay, at least we know here that this isn't rumors. There's actually a relationship going on. And they're also able to retrieve Sherrilyn, GPS data from Marie's phone. And they see that when she sent out this text that said that she was going off to do something that she had always wanted to do, this text came from the Flanders house. And James's GPS data on that day and time also was at the Flanders house. By this point, she's supposed to be gone. She says in the text, I've left. I didn't want to say anything because I knew you guys would try to stop me. But that's not even the most bizarre thing. During their investigation of going through Marie's last steps, they come across a plate inquiry from another police officer on the day she would have left the Flanders. So that Monday, the 17th, an officer saw a truck at a closed Chevron gas station. It stood out to him because it was not in the best area. It was unsecured, and he was curious if maybe it was left there, if it was reported stolen and somebody had abandoned it. So when he calls in the plates, it comes back as a Marie Carlson. Unfortunately, at this point, though, there were no reports of it being missing or her being missing on her file. After finding out that Marie's truck was here on that Monday, and then at the airport the next day, they cross-reference with James's cell phone records, and they see that his cell phone is pinging from the tower across the gas station on that Monday between 7:30 and 7:40 p.m. And as per his last statement, he said that the last time that he saw Marie was at 6:30 that night at his house before he left. One person they were able to confirm was not there as per GPS phone data was Tanya. In fact, James had called Tanya from this location at this gas station at 7:50, and her cell phone pings in Destin, where she was shopping with baby Grace. Investigators knew, as per the airport receipt for parking, Marie's truck showed up at the airport on the Tuesday at 10:19 a.m. There was no GPS data of Marie's phone being there, but there were 3 text messages that came from James's cell phone around 10:20 coming from the airport cell towers. While they're trying to put a case together, the theory is that something happened in the Flanders home between James and Marie, and then at some point he moved her vehicle, hoping that maybe somebody would steal it in this neighborhood. And the following day, when it wasn't stolen, he brought it to the airport. This would make sense why the day after that, he would run with this story of, I'm upping, just getting up, leaving, see you later, didn't want to tell you. They felt pretty confident that James had killed Marie on that Monday when he admitted to a close friend of his that there had been an altercation, and the decision was made to only charge James. The fact that they were able to place Tanya nowhere near the gas station when James made that call that evening led investigators to believe that she was not involved in what happened to Marie in the house that day. On May 14th, 2015, James Flanders was arrested for the murder of Marie Carlson, and there were some pretty big concerns for the prosecution. They absolutely realized that it was a pretty huge circumstantial case. They didn't have Marie's body, and they were pretty surprised with how calm, cool, collected James seemed to be, especially under stress, even, maybe even able to make himself likable. It just takes one person to convince, and you only have one chance at securing a conviction. So when the prosecution was approached by the defense and asked, what can we work out if there is a body recovered and we can try to bring some closure to Marie's loved ones, this was something that was huge to consider. On one hand, if they win, he can go to jail for life, but there's also the risk that they don't win, and they not only don't win and he perhaps maybe doesn't go to jail, but they'll never know where Marie is. So it was ultimately decided with the prosecution team as well as Marie's family and her ex-husband to accept a plea deal and be able to bring Marie home so that she could properly be buried and have some form of peace and closure. According to James Flanders, he said that the day that Marie died, she woke up that Monday morning and just something wasn't right with her. She was off, and they got into a pretty bad argument, and at one point she grabbed him, and then he grabbed her in a bear hug to try to protect her from herself and him, and during the scuffle, they fell to the floor, and he was still holding on to her. But when they hit the floor, they hit it really hard, and he realized that Marie had stopped moving. He said at that point, he turned her over, and she wasn't breathing. He was in shock for quite a while, just standing there. And then in a state of panic, he went to his shed, got a shovel, and just started digging a hole in the yard. After he was done digging this deep hole, is more than 5 feet deep, he wrapped Marie in a blanket and buried her in the yard. And that probably would have been so frustrating to everybody involved in the case, because there had been a team out there to try to locate her 6 months after she had disappeared. But unfortunately, just because of how deep he had dug that hole, their systems hadn't picked anything up. And most likely, if they had found her at that time, there would have not been a need for a plea deal, as she would have been in the backyard, unalive. After he admitted to everything that he did, he actually went out with investigators and the rescue team and showed them exactly where he had buried Marie. And that footage is pretty nauseating because once he's shown the area and marked it with flags for them, right before he's being taken back to jail, he asks for a moment and he just gets on his knees and he starts crying and he's like rubbing the grass and you just want to scream, like, blow it out your butt, man. On July 19th, 2016, he formally pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the death of Marie Carlson.
It's my fault. I failed Marie greatly in every way that I could fall and fail beyond words. What all of you have gone through for the past 4 years and 9 months is all because of me. Marie died in my arms. It wasn't intentional, but it was absolutely my fault. I failed as a man, I failed as a husband, a son, and as a friend. My life's aim, the goals aimed for, and the hopes of seeing and completing that.
And he was sentenced to 15 years in prison, meaning he will be released in 2028 when he is 60 years old. So still has a relatively decent amount of life to still live. It's not like he's getting released at 98 years old. And that's just got to be such a slap in the face for Marie's loved ones, for Marie's memory. And the fact that like there were no charges ever filed against Tanya. And I mean, I definitely have some feelings about that, especially when according to Marie's mother, the last time she had spoken to Marie, she said that Marie told her that things were tense in the house. So it didn't seem like just everything had been fine up until this one day, and she woke up in a bad mood, trying to push it on her mental health, and she just snapped. According to Marie's mom, there was a lot of arguing going on in the house for a while between everybody because the Flanders wanted Marie to leave and sign over her rights as Grace's parent. And Marie didn't want to. She wanted to be a part of raising her child. So just given that context from Marie's mom, that there were already issues going and it wasn't painted as this, happy throuple, we're all getting along and this is all working for us type situation, that makes me uneasy. And to this day, Tanya remains the guardian of Marie's baby, Grace, and is the one raising her. Now, that being said, I'm not trying to say you were there, you were in the house, your cell phone corroborates that you weren't. But if you listen to Tanya in interviews, she's not some meek, timid woman. She's, she can be like quite defensive, quite abrasive. She definitely has James's back in everything, and wouldn't surprise me if, in my opinion, she was given information after the fact and was aware of what was going on in the backyard and all of that. That is my opinion. So I think that's what probably just like stings in the situation a little bit more. But it is what it is. This is where things are at. And, so that I don't get all fired up again, because I let my emotions take control of me sometimes, we know this, I'm going to wrap this up with words from Marie's sister, Rose. Something she said in one of the interviews that I watched with her was that she wants Marie to be remembered not as a victim, but in a good light, because she was light. She said her sister is a loving mother, a wonderful sister, daughter, and friend, and that's what she wants people to remember her by. Whew, all right, that was a heavy one. They're all heavy, I know. I say this a lot. Okay, that's it for me today. If you have not already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means so much to me. It helps me so much. It really means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. The answer to today's riddle. Quick reminder, a man describes his daughters saying, they are all blonde, but two. All brunette, but two. And all redheaded, but two. How many daughters does he have? You guys, this one really upset me because I was like, I had all my fingers up. I'm trying to figure out. I never get any of them. I definitely didn't get this one. The answer is 3. He has a daughter with blonde hair, a daughter with red hair, and a daughter with brunette hair. Okay, all right. I will see you in the next video. I'll miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.